So on that note, I would like to invite, let me just give a quick introduction of our next speaker. And we're really honored to have Georges Voisset. So when Serge mentioned that Georges Voisset was in town last year, I tried to catch him, but he had already left. So we booked him 1 year in advance. And Georges is really not a stranger to this part of his world. If I can just give a quick introduction. So Professor Emeritus Georges Voisset first became interested in the Malay Pantun and the language when he first started his career at the University of Singapore. And I understand that was way back in 1973. And he has since written several books on the genre and on Malay and Indonesian literature, and he is also the co-founder and president of Pantun Sayang. You have the URL there, you can check it out, which is a poetical group which has promoted the genre among the Francophone world and has published 3 collections of genuine pantuns in French. And on that note, and go to the next slide. Pucuk pauh ambil sejemput, makan bersama ikan selayang. Dari jauh kami menjemput, terima kasih sudi bertandang. On that note, George.
Terima kasih atas undangan ini. Saya hati bercakap di depan Tan Sri dan Datuk-Datuk. Yeah, a bit higher, huh? Okay. Usually I have a loud voice, so I count on it, but maybe nowadays that my look is not exactly the same as on the photo. I have to make an effort. Well, I am going to try to insert exactly 200 years of history within 20 minutes. And I tend to speak slowly and slower with time, so it will be really something difficult, but I think I will do it. Why 200 years exactly? Because the story started in 1828, actually, in France. As Datuk Anwar Rizwan explained, the real history of Western Pantun started with the translation of Marsden's grammar in 1812. But we managed to find earlier Pantuns in France. And between Ernest Fouinet and Victor Hugo, there were also in-between people who are important. This is why I entitled my talk, How Tuan Pantun Settled in France. Normally, I would say from Victor Hugo to Pantun Sayang, but I found it was not modest enough. So I decided to write Napoléon instead of Victor Hugo, but you will understand why when I proceed. I bounce back at Datuk Anwar Rizwan, who published a few decades ago some Pantun Alif Batata, because Pantun belongs to the oral tradition, but it also it is intertwined with written tradition. In Malaysia, it is extremely difficult not to bounce back either on the one or the other, because they are very intricate. So here is, for example, a Pantun which starts with T. So we decided in my group, which I will present later, to have a special issue of our review. Our review has already 33 issues. One of the issues, the issue 25, is based upon this very same idea of writing 26 letters of the French alphabet in Pantuns. So we have a full show of French written Pantun, with the letterings, the letters. This is what I wanted to say first. Now, this is the cover of this issue 25. We have no 33 of them. I will show you later if I have time. But the story started 12 years ago when three musketeers who are present here, Serge, Jérôme and I, decided that we had had enough with Victor Hugo and Pantoun, and we decided to promote writing in French, genuine Pantouns, and not only talking about them or translating them, but writing them. Of course, in French, the result is not the same, but we try our best. These three Pantouns, translated by myself about 30 years ago, had a certain success because they roamed through the underground and buses all around Paris for 3 years, when Paris decided to have a campaign for the promotion of poetry instead of fighting in the underground. So this one, if it kalau tidak kerana bintang, masakan bulan naik setinggi. Kalau tidak kerana abang, masakan saya datang ke sini. Kalau ada jarum yang patah, jangan disimpan di dalam peti. Kalau ada kata yang salah, jangan disimpan di dalam hati. This one was the first translated, and as you can see, maybe you cannot see well from far, but I explain, where is the dot? The dot is here. Pantoun. It was translated as Pantoun, and then it was corrected as Pantoun. Because this is the Victor Hugo mistake when he first published this famous butterfly Pantun berkait. He made a mistake, Pantoum, and this mistake has remained, and it has created a genre in French, and then all over Europe, and then all over the world, which is called Pantoum, and which little by little had less and less to do with the genuine genre. This is why we tried 12 years ago to re-establish a real connection between the Malay world and France. Unfortunately, it's in French, but it is all English, so we cannot do otherwise. Otherwise, we leave it to the Americans to create their own groups, but they still not have. Yeah? Okay, next one. This is a book in which you will see Victor Hugo. No? Who wanted to have something more exotic than what had been written before. And this is where we reach Napoleon, because during the Napoleon Wars, France was very busy fighting and had no much interest in literatures from other countries, whereas the German had with Goethe, among others. So when the wars were over, Victor Hugo was 24, and he said, I want Asian poetry, I want Asian exotism, I want it more oriental, more oriental, more oriental. And then this Ernest Fouinet had found something more oriental than anything else, which was the Marsden's Pantouns. You see, lebih exotic lagi, lebih exotic. Lebih eksotik lagi, lebih eksotik lagi. Oh, kali ini dia akan berpuas hati. This is what this Ernest Fouinet wrote to Hugo, to please him, Ernest Fouinet. And then this translation came into the hands of a friend, a young friend of Victor Hugo, whose name is Théophile Gautier. And Théophile Gautier didn't understand at all the interest of a Malay Pantun. What he got interested in was the beautiful image. Every time I make the same mistake, but this is my tendency. Butterflies sport on their wing around, they fly to the sea by the reef of rocks. This is what he found beautiful. And so he wrote Butterflies, Théophile Gautier, Pantoum. So it reads, butterflies, the color of snow, in clouds to the sea no fair. White butterflies, beauties, when can I follow your path through the blue of the air? Do you know, oh beauty of beauties, my sacred dancer with jet black eyes? If they could lend me their wings, do you know where my journey would lie? Without taking one kiss to the roses, across valleys and forests I would fly. To your parted lips I would go, and there, flower of my soul, would I die. So it's a beautiful translation into English because it rhymes. So this poem has been so famous in French that I have found over 100 interpretations in music, in classical music, 100 different melodies. And one of these melodies, my chouchou, Shamina, is going to sing to you after the French lines, of course, after I finished. I mentioned René Gil, who is a quite forgotten figure of Pantoun because he is probably the second one after the German, the Franco-German Chamisso, to try to write Pantouns. And this is the people who interest us most are those who wrote Pantoun. They are even rarer than those who are interested in Pantoun. Then I mentioned Fauconnier, of course. We have talked about Fauconnier many times in Malaysia and in his hometown in France, so I'll just jump over him. And then I reach a certain surgeon whose name was Deschamps de Pas, Louis Auguste Deschamps de Pas. And this is his Pantoun. And this Pantoun that he translates afterwards was published by him in 1808. So some 12 years. At that time, Victor Hugo was only 6 years old. But this Pantoun was collected when Deschamps de Pas was in the Netherlands between 1793, the Revolution period, and 1808. So I will tell you the story because it's quite interesting. You know, it is very small, but it is very rich. And we published an essay which I wrote on our site, Pantun Sayang, concerning this at this date first Pantouns found by a Frenchman and published by a Frenchman in France with a translation. So in 1793. I check at my watch. In 1793, the revolution was in process, but the King Louis XVI was very eager to know what happened to a previous French expedition who never gave any news in 1788. So he missioned an exploration to the Southern Pacific in 1793. And there's a young guy who was both a botanist and a surgeon who embarked on the expedition. So they roamed through the Southern Pacific, around 2 or 3 times around Australia, to trying to have news from this previous expedition without success. And since they were very badly prepared because of the revolution situation, they become sick, they started fighting because one part of the crew was pro-royalist, one part of the crew was Republican, so it ended up in a disaster. So that the head of the expedition decided to stop at Batavia, because Batavia, the Netherlands, were a friendly country of France. Unfortunately, when they arrived 2 years after they departed, in 1795, the Netherlands had become enemy from France because France had beheaded the king, which they didn't know. So when they arrived in Batavia, all sick, they heard that first their king didn't exist anymore, and that the country in which they hoped to regain some strength were enemies. So they were all jailed, but not jailed for a long time because the Dutch were not very much interested in people, especially sick people. You know, you have to pay for their repair, for everything. So they were free to leave, but they kept all the boxes, 21 boxes, which contained 2 years of research in the Southern Pacific. This one interested them most. So Deschamps de Pas lost the first part of his research, but he decided not to go back to France, because he felt that the situation was dangerous. So he decided to put his knowledge at the disposition of the official enemies, hoping that in the future things will go better. So he did research. During this research, between 1795 and 1802, he discovered the Rafflesia, Padma Raksasa, and he discovered Pantoun. In 1802, Napoleon wanted to put an end to the to the wars, the Republican wars with the world, with Europe. before he started his own. So there was peace, called the Peace of Amiens in 1802. So Deschamps de Pars thought that it was time to go back. So he went back with a part of his new research without the Padma Rafflesia. So he went back. Unfortunately, by the time the boat reached Mauritius, the treaty had been broken and England was at war with France. So instead of ending up in France, he ended up in the British Museum. And the British Museum confiscated all the research of himself and all the others who had come with him. One part were given back in 1821 after the death of Napoleon. One part was given back under Victoria, and one part is still there. So I hope there is no British friend here, but please give us back all the information. Only 2 small articles were published by Deschamps de Pars after he came back in 1802 in France, because he decided to give up all international research and concentrate on surgery. So he opened an hospital and all that. And he published 2 short papers, one on upas, the famous poison tree that intrigued very much the Europeans at that time, and a very short notice of 3 or 4 pages that we managed to find, I don't know how anymore, and published in our review. And this very single interesting pantun reads like this: Dari mana datangnya banjir, kalau tidak hujan di hulu. Dari mana datangnya cinta, kalau tidak kenal dahulu. Biasanya this pantun says, dari mana datangnya cinta, dari mata turun ke hati. Okay? So this is first love at first sight. This is the way I discovered Pantun some half a century ago, but I won't say more about Pantun Cinta because my wife is here, so. But usually it is like that. But this one is interesting because it says quite the opposite. It says that you have to know each other before you get in love. So maybe a more official Pantun by way of family choices, I don't know, but it's interesting anyway. This is a Pantun I wrote about Napoleon. It says, Brussels, New York, perfidious Albion, virtuous soldiers of the Diet. The Diet was the parliaments of the Western countries at war with France, or France at war with them. It is at Café Napoleon that always is cooked the best baguette. The joke. Pantun Luchu. And now I come present quickly our review, the review we started 12 years ago. We have the welcoming page, Pantun Sayang. We have publication, we have a blog, we have bibliography, Biblio Pantun, and we have research. So this is the opening page. This is the bibliography page. And this is the current call for Pantuns that we have this year. And because we have a competition of Pantun every year. And this year, the name of the competition is Silk Roads. So whoever writes a Pantun on the theme of Silk Road can send it to us. And then we have a debate, and then we give a prize. But you gave me an idea, Dato, because at the moment, for the next issue, which is coming in September, we have a special file on trees, Pantun and trees. Because in last March, at the occasion of the first French book festival, they had a tree of Pantuns. And about 80 students from Malaysia wrote Pantuns on nice leaves, and we are going to publish the whole thing as a special issue about trees, Pantuns and trees. So I think if we can add Pantuns by all of you, if we receive them in English, we translate them into French, and we add them to this special issue, because our issues can be printed on paper. We managed to that there are 4, you can divide by 4, so that it's all free access. So from the free access, you can just have it printed and it becomes a book. So welcome for an extension to Taman Tugu. This is the issue 33. And these are a few, some samples of the review near my fireplace in France. But they seem quite happy. Don't worry, they're not cold. They can still fly. They can still use their wings to come back anytime. We publish also collections. Our first collection, this is a second collection in 2021, which is called Les Vagabonds de Malaisie, The Wanderers of Malaysia. The Malaysian wanderers is Peperonia veronia. It is a Malay, very common Malay butterfly. Now I come to the end of my presentation. Shamina will take over by singing one of the 100 over versions of this famous fake Pantoun by Théophile Gautier. So I read it in French before she takes over, because usually I know that singers don't like to have at the same time the singing and the visualization, because when you look, you tend not to listen. So I will respect that and I will read it first and she will sing it later. Les papillons, couleur de neige, volent par essaim sur la mer. Beau papillon blanc, quand pourrais-je prendre le bleu chemin de l'air? Savez-vous, ô belle des belles, ma bayadère aux yeux de jet, s'ils me voulaient prêter leurs ailes, dites, savez-vous où j'irais? Sans prendre un seul baiser aux roses, à travers vallons et forêts, j'irai à vos lèvres mi-closes, fleurs de mon âme, et j'y mourrai. It was published in 1838. And now, Shamina on the stage. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Georges. I've always known that Georges speaks Malay far better than I can manage with French. Yeah. So